Florida, a place many call paradise. It's where visitors seek beautiful beaches, fun-filled resorts, and a place to spend the rest of their life. Millions of people visit or reside in the southeastern tip of Florida, from West Palm Beach to Miami, and this has led to extensive urban development along the coast and an increasing demand for resources. This includes water, which is found in every direction around Miami. Our changing climate will threaten these areas in more ways than one. The flatness of South Florida lends the region vulnerable to stronger storms and sea level rise. And since it's mainly covered in asphalt, rainwater has limited ways to enter the ground. Even on sunny days, low-lying areas are prone to flooding. The city of Miami has invested billions of dollars in the construction of seawalls, sandbags, raising of homes, drainage pipes for rainwater, and slowly raised roads to prevent further sea level rise and defend against storm surges. But with increasing severity and frequency of storms, these structures may not be as resilient as we'd hoped. This rush of preventative development is associated with habitat disturbance and fragmentation. Therefore, conservation groups are investing in Mother Nature for help. Why? Mangroves, beach dunes, and coral reefs are natural living barriers and have been dubbed living shorelines because they have been shown to combat the effects of South Florida's changing climate. At MUVE, or the Museum Volunteers for the Environment, with the Philip and Patricia Frost Museum of Science, we're dedicated to protecting the communities we grew up in and the coastal ecosystems we love.
So MUVE started in 2007 as an eco-art project, and it really was to raise awareness about the importance of this tree and how all the ecosystem services it provides. And then it moved into a volunteer-based program because we took those propagules and we outplanted them into the wild where they will provide habitat and restoration and shoreline stabilization and become living shorelines, not only to help benefit Miami by becoming this great ecosystem, but also engaging the community in these outreach activities and getting them to get their hands dirty and get involved in environmental protection.
There are 3 species of mangroves around Miami: red mangrove, black mangrove, and white mangrove. They are well adapted to salt water, and their seedlings or propagules float on the water and colonize elsewhere, expanding their range. Their roots remain stable in the ground, withstanding the impact of wave energy, providing inland areas protection.
So a mangrove is a type of specially adapted tree found specifically by areas of saline or brackish water. Their importance is very difficult to be overstated. They act as carbon sinks, so the leaves that fall into the water by mangrove ecosystems get deposited largely underground. It's removing carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere.
These mangroves also provide critical habitat for an abundance of flora and fauna. In the wet season, our efforts shift to the beach dunes at the City of Miami's Virginia Key North Point Beach Park. Beach dunes are another amazing example of a living shoreline, as the native species' roots stabilize the sand and remain above the waterline, limiting sea level rise.
So sand dunes give very similar ecosystem services compared to mangroves. Dunes also act in a similar way, except that they're a bit more inland. So when there's storm surge for a hurricane, for example, dunes act as the very primary defense of anything that's inland. So the most desirable species are things like sea oats, which are the dominant form of vegetation here, dune sunflower, beach elder, sea lavender, saw palmetto. All of these things are late-stage dune plants that we're trying to restore. The non-natives, there's about maybe 15 or 20 different species of non-native ones. For example, Madagascar periwinkle is one of those species that we constantly remove. It's a wildflower that's endemic to the island of Madagascar, where it's actually an endangered species. We also have things like Australian pine, which is arguably the worst invasive species in all of Virginia Key. And lastly, we have beach scaevola, which is another very strong invasive that we also constantly remove from the dune.
They also are an important source of habitat for native species. Offshore, coral reefs have been shown to provide substantial protection against storms and flooding by reducing up to 97% of sea wave energy. Wave energy is significantly reduced across wider reef flats when passing over the wave crest, which is where the shallowest part of the reef occurs. These ecosystems are teeming with life, 1 to 9 million species, and act as a front guard protecting our coastlines and communities from devastating impacts. To our despair, about 20% of the original coral reefs around the world have died due to climate change and human activities. But at MUVE, we are working tirelessly with the help of our thousands of volunteers to restore and protect these natural ecosystems so that they can act as living shorelines to protect us from the threats of sea level rise. Once a month at areas around South Florida, we are open to the public to come as volunteers and help out at our restoration workday events, which involve pulling invasive species and planting native species in their place, as well as beach cleanups. Over time, the dunes have flourished with the native species, which has prevented a significant amount of erosion, and the mangroves have expanded their range. We rely on the expertise from the Miami-Dade County, Durham, as well as the general public. So, come out and let's get moving.